If you're in the mood for a captivating story that combines elements of medicine and powerful magic, Daily Dose of Anime Recap has a recommendation for you, Dr. Player. Raymond, once a prince of the Houston Kingdom, endured the harsh rejection of his status as an outsider. He faced disdain from his siblings and was treated as an adversary by those around him. Determined to escape his lowly position and attain a life of wealth, he made a life-changing decision to become the greatest healer. Armed with the ability to heal and an advanced leveling system, can he achieve the lofty ambitions he has set for himself? If you're curious to witness the heights Raymond will reach, join us on an enthralling journey through Dr. Player. And remember, if you enjoy this series, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment for Daily Dose of Anime Recap, letting us know your thoughts for the next episode. Although Raymond was born into a prestigious family, he was mistreated and looked down upon by everyone because he was an illegitimate child. Perhaps out of sympathy, fate bestowed upon him a special talent, the power to heal. Those blessed with the ability to heal, like him, were known as healers. Healers, no matter what their status, were treated well and lived with wealth and honor. Therefore, the only way for Raymond, an illegitimate child, to gain recognition was to become a healer. Despite dedicating himself to relentless studying day and night, he couldn't achieve remarkable results. In fact, he scored even lower than an F, the lowest possible grade. He was a pathetic healer. Even after 5 years had passed, Raymond could not surpass being an apprentice and remained a mere student in the healing profession. Currently, he worked as a lowly assistant to other healers, obediently carrying out their every request. He was frequently berated and bullied by fellow students. Raymond's life remained unchanged until one fateful day. While tidying up at the library, he pulled out a book to read. As he engrossed himself in the pages, he suddenly heard an unfamiliar sound behind him. Startled by the abrupt noise, he dropped his water container. Raymond turned around, only to find an enigmatic board with words written on it. "You have awakened as a player. Class, surgeon." Initially, he dismissed it as an illusion caused by overexertion, but no matter how many times he rubbed his eyes, the peculiar board remained. While Raymond was lost in thought, not only did the space change, but even his clothes on his body changed. Amidst his confusion, he suddenly heard someone calling, addressing him as Kelly. Uncertain if he had fallen victim to some dark magic, he instinctively handed the person a pair of scissors. He didn't comprehend their words, but he sensed the need to keep his hands above his waist. Moreover, he suddenly realized that he had become a doctor, partaking in a surgery being performed on a patient with a ruptured spleen, called a splenectomy. While Raymond contemplated the bewildering turn of events, he was abruptly ejected from that peculiar realm. He began to recall the extraordinary occurrences he had witnessed. In the midst of grappling with the mysteries that plagued him, a series of bizarre boards appeared, leaving him puzzled and bewildered. Suddenly, an individual entered the scene. The person unleashed a tirade of insults, drenching Raymond's head with a bucket of dirty water. Others gleefully reveled in his mistreatment. Nevertheless, Raymond remained unfazed by their malicious words and diligently continued with his cleaning duties. After a while, someone approached him, delivering news of Chief Healer Lance's desire to meet with him. As Raymond entered the room, he encountered the Chief Healer, leisurely sipping tea from a seated position. After exchanging a few greetings, the Chief Healer commenced a scathing critique of Raymond. It turned out that that guy had actually entered there just 1 year later than him, yet had achieved high B-rank healer and was now a Chief Healer. Finally, the Chief Healer revealed the purpose of calling him there, to revoke Raymond's qualification as an apprentice and expel him from the healing clinic. Raymond didn't want to leave, so he pleaded with the Chief Healer. With the guidance of the mysterious board, he confidently said to the Chief Healer, "I will prove that I can treat patients." Raymond believed in his ability to heal the patient, so he proposed to the Chief Healer, "If you assign me a patient, I will treat that patient." The chief healer provided him with the patient's information and said, "If you can't treat this patient successfully, I won't chase you out." Leaving the clinic, Raymond made his way to Rankin Street. At that moment, he felt anxious, fearing that he might not be able to heal because it was his first time treating someone alone. If he failed, he would be expelled from the clinic. Without a professional certification, practicing medicine would lead to imprisonment. Lost in thought while walking, Raymond found himself standing in front of the patient's house without even realizing it. Suddenly, the door swung open. Caught off guard, he collided with it, ending up seated on the ground. The person who opened the door was a young girl, who became delighted upon learning that Raymond was from the clinic. Despite knowing he was not a healer but merely an apprentice, the girl's mother warmly welcomed him and invited him inside. Glancing at the patient's medical records, Raymond discovered that the girl's father was seriously ill. Treating the condition through healing techniques required a healer of at least grade B skill level. However, due to their family's extreme poverty, they couldn't afford a high-ranking healer. Witnessing the circumstances faced by the mother and daughter, Raymond recalled a similar situation from his childhood. Back then, he had rushed to the clinic, seeking a healer's assistance in treating his own mother's illness. Holding a coin in his hand, he pleaded with them to save his mother. Now, this poor little girl resembled his past self, pleading for him to save her father. Raymond intended to enter and examine the patient's condition when the mysterious board reappeared. The system informed him that, since he volunteered to heal a patient, he had received a special bonus and 5 skill points. After a quick review, he realized that his initial task from the system was to treat his first patient. Empowered by this newfound confidence, Raymond entered the room to meet his patient. As he stepped inside, an unpleasant odor immediately reached his nostrils. Suddenly, he became overwhelmed with worry, forgetting everything momentarily. Just as he was feeling anxious, a yellow notification board materialized before his eyes, informing him that his passive skill, Heart of Steel, had manifested. With the skill activated, he gradually regained his composure. Raymond began examining the patient. Observing the festering wound, he identified it as a hip abscess. He instructed the woman to prepare clean water and a sharp knife. However, when she heard about using a knife for treatment, she became extremely concerned and asked about the procedure. Raymond replied confidently, "I am going to perform surgery." As Raymond used the knife to cut into the wound, the woman suddenly rushed over, her face filled with horror. Upon hearing Raymond's reassurance and his firm belief that he could save her husband, the woman gradually released her grip, calming down. Raymond reminded himself to avoid any mistakes. In common medical knowledge, healers were expected to possess a cool head, but a passionate heart. Drawing upon his surgery knowledge, treating the abscess exclusion at this level was rather straightforward, not quite reaching the level of a surgical procedure. First, Raymond made an incision with the knife, and a thick, foul-smelling mixture of fluid and blood began to ooze out. The sight of the wound was quite alarming. After regaining his composure, he used a clean cloth to carefully wipe away the pus and blood. Next, he used sterile water that had been boiled to cleanse the inside of the abscess until no more pus could be seen. Then, he used the knife to cut out all the dead tissue. To complete the procedure, he applied a potion that was made from herbs to the wound that possessed natural antibiotic properties on the wound. When Raymond announced that the treatment was complete, both the mother and daughter expressed their immense joy and relief. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the woman tearfully thanked him. This marked the first time that Raymond had received such heartfelt appreciation and commendation, which deeply touched him. Upon returning to Belland, Raymond promptly sought out the chief healer. He shared his success in treating the patient, but the chief healer remained skeptical, accusing Raymond of dishonesty. The chief healer believed that his limited healing abilities could not truly save lives. Ultimately, the chief healer decided to personally verify Raymond's claim. He even cautioned Raymond about the consequences of falsehood. Just as the chief healer departed, the mysterious notification board reappeared. Raymond's class rank was now listed as Rookie Resident. After carefully reviewing each stat on the notification board, which included stamina, senses, intelligence, and one stat that remained locked due to insufficient qualifications, Raymond decided to allocate the 2 remaining stat points he had acquired to enhance his senses. While Raymond daydreamed about achieving a prestigious position and becoming the finest healer, the chief healer returned, wearing a displeased expression. The chief healer adamantly refused to acknowledge Raymond's healing abilities, attributing his success merely to luck. As a result, the chief healer decided to assign Raymond to a medical relief station, providing him with a 15-day deadline to prove himself. Fortune seemed to smile upon Raymond as he would now have the opportunity to examine patients in order to level up. However, despite these newfound possibilities, Raymond remained bound to his role as a janitor, dutifully performing his cleaning duties as before. To be able to meet patients, Raymond approached a C-rank student named Hansen. Every time Raymond bandaged someone or administered medication to a patient, he earned experience points. After 3 days in the first aid station, he reached level 4. As long as he diligently collected experience points, he believed that one day he would become a top healer and have a better life. He imagined swimming in a sea of money, eating exquisite meals, and drinking the finest wine. With money, he would no longer be treated poorly like a servant. He wouldn't live a life dependent on the generosity of others as he did when he was young. After Raymond finished treating a patient with medication, the elderly woman expressed her gratitude and praised him profusely. To his surprise, when he treated patients with kindness, his fame increased. He not only received skill points as a reward, but also earned the title of Kind Healer. In pursuit of a future of indulgence and fine dining, Raymond plunged into cleaning up. After tidying up the first aid station, he reached level 5 and gained permission to purchase skills at the market. While contemplating which skill to buy, someone shouted, "Urgent! A patient's throwing up blood. Hurry up and use heal." Raymond wanted to treat the patient, but his healing ability was not of a rank healer. Among all the healers in Bellin Clinic, only Director Bucks had achieved a rank healing powers. However, he was not present at the moment. Although Raymond had considered using medical techniques to treat the patient, he was hesitant to act recklessly because he was just a beginner resident, not a skilled one. Meanwhile, the patient continued to throw up blood, but the chief healer refused to treat him and told someone to take him home. Raymond, witnessing this, chased after them, but was surprised to be scolded by the healer. The healer even told him to treat the patient himself if he wanted to. While pondering on what to do, Raymond received an unexpected mission to heal a patient with conditions above your skill level with fierce will. If anything went wrong while treating the patient, he would lose everything. All of his efforts and hard work up until now would be in vain. Originally, Raymond had planned to disregard the life or death of the patient, but in the end, his conscience wouldn't allow it. As he turned around, he faced the chief healer, and suddenly his Iron Heart skill was activated. The Iron Heart skill elevated his determination and unwavering resolve, leading him to make a commitment to dedicate his life to helping humanity. The chief healer agreed to let Raymond treat the patient and departed. Hansen, not wanting to witness the patient's demise, decided to lend a hand. Hansen reported that everything was prepared, and Raymond carefully double-checked all the necessary tools before proceeding with the surgery. First, with a hallucinogen, he put the patient to sleep and anesthetized him. Then, he sanitized the area. While Raymond was cleaning the patient's abdomen, Hansen asked inquisitively, "Senior, can I ask what exactly you're going to be doing?" Raymond briefly replied, "Surgery." Hansen couldn't hear well and asked again, but then he saw Raymond using a scalpel to make an incision on the patient's abdomen. Hansen was shocked and exclaimed. At that moment, Raymond fully exposed the patient's abdomen, clearly observing the fat muscles and blood. Amidst a moment of confusion about the next steps, The Iron Heart skill was suddenly activated. He was no longer in a state of worry. His thoughts were instantly filled with the exhilarating vision of becoming the #1 healer. He felt a surge of determination and excitement. While Raymond was fervently focused on treating the patient, Hansen grew increasingly frightened and worried. Upon seeing the yellowish liquid leaking from the duodenum, Hansen realized the patient suffered from a perforated duodenal ulcer. It was essential to ligate the artery and block the hole. Raymond promptly called upon Hansen to lend a helping hand. Observing Hansen's puzzled expression, Raymond instructed urgently, "Lift this up." Hansen quickly complied, his face reflecting a mix of fear and tears welling up. As Raymond prepared to cut out the perforated part with the knife, he encountered difficulty controlling his hand and even momentarily forgot his knowledge. Attempting to regain composure and determine the next course of action, Raymond closed his eyes, recollecting his thoughts. Suddenly, it dawned on him that he needed to buy a new skill. Recognizing that having stamina and intelligence alone would not suffice without the ability to save the patient, Raymond swiftly purchased the surgeon's nimble hand skill. With the activation of the surgeon's nimble hand skill, not only were his fingertips highly sensitive, but his hand movements became deft and precise. In no time, Raymond reached the final step, closing the wound. Following the completion of the surgery, Raymond received numerous notifications of his level-up achievements. Overwhelmed with relief and joy, he celebrated the success of the operation, tears streaming down his face. Upon hearing the news that Raymond had successfully treated the patient, the chief healer rushed to see for himself. As he entered the room, he inquired if Director Bucks was the one who had provided treatment to the patient. While Raymond was still taken aback by the question, the healer continued with a demanding tone, questioning, "Who on earth treated this patient? There's no way you did it." It was evident that the chief healer held a grudge against Raymond, and despite his attempts to explain, the healer remained skeptical of Raymond's abilities. Only after the patient himself confirmed that Raymond was indeed the one who treated him did the healer finally believe. In that moment, the patient also recalled that it was this very healer who had initially refused to help him. Ignoring Raymond's attempts to stop him, the angry patient threw a container of urine at the healer. Startled, the chief healer ran away, fearing the threat of having shit thrown at him. The next day, while cleaning, Raymond overheard a conversation among the group. They were discussing his strange method of treating patients. Except for Hansen, the people there still had a negative view of him. While Raymond was lost in thought, the chief healer approached him. After learning that the healer asked him to attend the Imperial Palace birthday festival, Raymond just wanted to fight him. The birthday festival served as a banquet commemorating the birth of the founding king, a mega Imperial Palace festival where all the nobles in the capital would be at. The healers selected to participate were those recognized for their exceptional abilities. It appeared that the healer had sent Raymond there in an attempt to undermine his career. Raymond began to reminisce about the years he had spent living in the Imperial Palace, which had felt like his own personal hell. From his childhood until adulthood, he had endured bullying from his own siblings, who dubbed him the Shadow Prince. Within this lavish realm, he was seen as a blemish, a tarnished presence. Even in his father's esteemed eyes, he was considered the sole misstep he had ever made. The kingdom of Houston, a country of chivalry, never acknowledged illegitimate children like him. He was perceived as nothing more than a horrid filth that sullied the king's majesty. Raymond really didn't want to attend the Imperial Palace birthday festival, but the rewards from the system were 3 times higher than treating the first patient, so he reluctantly decided to participate. Furthermore, the chief healer had promised that after his return, Raymond would be allowed to take the official healer qualification examination. Raymond had endured so much for this opportunity. He couldn't just go empty-handed to the kingdom. Raymond had a plan in mind. Once he became a certified healer, he would leave the Bellin Clinic. He wouldn't have to encounter face anymore. Returning to the palace after 5 years, in Raymond's eyes, the palace still appeared grand and magnificent as before. Suddenly, memories of the past flooded back. At that time, he was treated as insignificant by everyone in the palace, from the servants to the royal family. Thinking of this, he didn't want to proceed any further, so he turned around and fled. However, after careful reflection, he realized that he was returning not for the sake of the kingdom, but for the patience. Suddenly, the system announced that his proficiency in the Heart of Steel skill had reached level A. As his Heart of Steel skill increased, he felt a sense of delusion instead of fear. If he could save a noble individual, he would be generously rewarded. Raymond purchased a few additional skills before entering the palace. As he entered, he heard people at the banquet raising their glasses and praising their great king. Yet in the background, someone mentioned the Dark Prince. Unexpectedly, a man recognized Raymond. While Raymond admired his reflection in the mirror and complimented his appearance due to the Heart of Steel skill, he noticed Princess Sophia approaching him. Her gaze remained unchanged, as if she were observing a mere insect. While Raymond observed Sophia, he heard a familiar voice insulting him as a rotten lemon. Encountering the fourth Prince Satil, all Raymond could hear in his mind were his harsh and cruel words. Not only that, but the scar on his hand still ached, serving as a painful reminder. Whenever they faced each other, Satil was a venomous snake, and Raymond was a vulnerable little mouse consumed by fear. When Raymond found himself cornered by Satil, his Heart of Steel skill kicked in. The system also informed him that this red-haired prince was difficult to please and held a high rank. Once the method to handle asshole skill was activated, Raymond transformed into a different person. To his surprise, his calm demeanor made Satil uneasy. Raymond engaged in a friendly conversation with Satil, asking him, "This is where healers reside. Did you not come because you're feeling unwell?" Upon learning that Satil had no health issues, Raymond felt delighted and suggested that he go and enjoy the grand hall. Satil was furious, but before he could retort, Raymond hurriedly rushed to aid a guest who had fainted due to dizziness. When Raymond saw Satil approaching again, he continued to inquire about his well-being. Satil's expression turned ominous as he realized that Raymond was trying to kick him out. In order to find a reason to admonish Raymond, Satil pretended to be ill. However, after checking his pulse, Raymond concluded that his fatigue was a result of excessive drinking. He advised Satil to be cautious with alcohol and take good care of his health. After a few more exchanges, Raymond finally managed to dismiss Satil. At that moment, the system notified Raymond that he had earned 5 skill points and advised him to focus on treating patients instead of being disturbed by rude customers in the future. Raymond realized that the red-haired prince was not as intimidating as he seemed. He was just a fool. While discreetly gesturing towards Satil, Raymond was caught by Sophia. Despite Sophia's lack of politeness in her speech, Raymond greeted her warmly and complimented her beauty. Upon hearing that Sophia wasn't feeling well, Raymond offered to examine her, but she declined. A while later, Sophia took the stage to deliver a speech. However, she fainted after saying only a few sentences. When Sophia passed out, an A-rank healer tried to treat her, but it didn't work. Raymond felt really worried about the situation. Despite knowing that Sophia was the protagonist of the quest, but with her prestigious status, if he failed to heal her, he would face a severe punishment from the Count. However, because he wanted Sophia to apologize to him, Raymond ignored the risks and confidently said, "I'll treat the princess." Ignoring the commotion around him, Raymond focused on checking Sophia's pulse. She had sudden cardiac arrest, so he needed to get her blood circulating from her heart smoothly. But when Raymond placed his hands on Sophia's chest, the surrounding people erupted in outcry. They believed he was disrespecting Sophia's precious body. Just as someone was about to pull him away, the Count appeared. Surprisingly, he didn't stop Raymond. Instead, he helped him handle the situation. The others started whispering and talking among themselves. Meanwhile, Raymond continued his efforts to save Sophia's life. He tried performing chest compressions, but they didn't work. and Sophia's heart remained motionless. If he didn't find a solution soon, both Sophia and Raymond would be in danger. After some time, Raymond found an alternative to a defibrillator. He accessed the system store and purchased a skill called lightning magic. With the skill in hand, Raymond held Sophia's collarbone with one hand and placed the other under her arm before using lightning magic. Suddenly, a man rushed in, threatening Raymond with a sword. But after the A-rank healer confirmed that Sophia's pulse had returned to normal, the man put away his sword. Raymond explained to the king that he didn't save Princess Sophia using conventional healing methods, but rather a different approach. Upon hearing Raymond's response, the king stood with crossed arms, observing him silently. When Raymond discovered that the king wanted to meet him again, he was taken aback. He wondered about the purpose behind the king's request. Raymond vividly remembered the first time he encountered his father, which happened when his mother passed away. At that moment, he believed he would suffer in the slums, but then a well-dressed middle-aged man appeared. The man escorted Raymond to the royal palace, arranged for his treatment, and departed without uttering another word. However, since that encounter, Raymond never crossed paths with his father again. Due to the lack of attention from his father, Raymond endured mistreatment and bullying. Suddenly, the pain in Raymond's arm wound resurfaced. Despite feeling down, Raymond's spirits lifted after noticing the message board and rewards. The system not only acknowledged his level up, but also recognized him as the one who saved a noble person. After some time, Raymond proceeded to meet the king. When asked about his method of treatment, Raymond reiterated his explanation that he had learned an ancient secret technique from ancient ruins. Raymond remained unafraid of being caught in a lie because it was true that ancient ruins had ancient knowledge that was lost over time. Many aspects within the ancient ruins still remained unexplored. Following a discussion, the king ultimately bestowed a reward upon Raymond. The king granted Raymond the freedom to choose his own reward. After careful consideration, Raymond expressed his desire to become a healer. His response surprised everyone in the room. Not only that, but many individuals secretly praised him. To attain the freedom to practice medical techniques without hindrance, Raymond humbly requested permission from the king. Having accomplished what he desired, Raymond approached the king with one final request. Raymond had no desire for wealth or material possessions. What he truly wanted was the recognition and honor of being a skilled healer. Upon hearing the king's inquiry, Raymond confidently responded, "If your majesty allows it, please bestow me the medal of the bringer." His words not only surprised those around him, but even caught the attention of the person seated on the illustrious golden throne. The Medal of the Bringer, he mentioned, was a prestigious award reserved for individuals who had made significant contributions to the kingdom. It symbolized honor and distinction. Unexpectedly, the system informed Raymond that everyone was deeply moved by his noble intentions. It also announced that his reputation had soared. Little did anyone know that receiving the Medal of the Bringer would grant Raymond the esteemed title of an honorary knighthood. It was an honorary position without actual power, but accompanied by noble status. When asked again by the king, Raymond remained steadfast in his request, reiterating his desire for the medal. In a matter of mere words, the system notified Raymond that his reputation had surged once again. Naturally, the generous king readily agreed to his request without hesitation. As Raymond departed the royal palace, filled with excitement, he remained oblivious to the fact that two individuals were secretly observing his every step from a distant tower. One of them said that Raymond had changed a lot, almost unrecognizable. Recalling his first encounter, he remembered Raymond as a pitiful and desperate soul on the brink of death. When news reached him of the king's intention to bring Raymond into the palace, he had desperately tried to prevent it. Raymond felt that becoming a noble was truly advantageous. Almost everyone treated him cautiously. Even the chief healer Lance refrained from challenging him too much. Raymond confronted Lance, and no matter how he taunted, Lance didn't dare to retort as before. He showed great obedience and respect. Lance addressed Raymond as Sir Raymond. Now, armed with his noble title, Raymond could freely treat patients without facing any opposition or interference. Suddenly, a frantic individual burst into the room, urgently reporting a patient in dire need of immediate treatment. The patient had suffered a stab wound to the abdomen. Initially, Raymond believed that with Lance's B-rank healing power, saving the patient would be a relatively simple task, requiring only a bit of time and effort. However, upon arriving at the scene, Raymond was taken aback to discover that Lance had callously ignored the wounded patient once again. The injured man's name was Clearin, and he was from August Country. He got hurt a few days ago. While delivering a letter to Prince Limerton, he was unexpectedly attacked by robbers. But Clearin believed that those brutal robbers were actually assassins sent by Prince Cairn to take his life. Clearin felt incredibly lucky when he stumbled upon Balin Clinic. He hurriedly entered seeking help, but to his surprise he saw Clearin's disheveled and pitiful appearance and refused to provide treatment, mistaking him for a beggar. While the other healers were trying to save their patients, repeatedly urged everyone to escort this beggar to the White Clinic. Despite Clearin's claims of belonging to the esteemed August family, remained skeptical and refused to offer any treatment. Fortunately, Raymond arrived just in time. To Raymond's surprise, immediately handed Clearin over to him. Initially hesitant to accept the responsibility, Raymond eventually decided to treat Clearin. As Raymond agreed to save him, Heart of Steel was activated, made some mocking and threatening remarks before swiftly departing. If the treatment were to fail, Raymond would lose everything he had achieved in the royal capital. Suddenly, Hansen rushed over, offering his support to Raymond. Naturally, Raymond didn't refuse and expressed his gratitude. Once all the necessary preparations were completed, Raymond began the treatment for Clearin. He wanted to perform a blood transfusion, but the Le Pentana continent lacked the necessary equipment or technology for it. As Raymond held the surgical knife, his extraordinary skill, surgeon's nimble hands, was activated. The system also informed Raymond that his sense was temporarily enhanced, increasing from 16 to 26. With his heightened senses, Raymond found it remarkably easy to make an incision in Clearin's lower abdomen. As blood gushed out profusely, Hansen became overwhelmed with fear. Raymond, too, felt anxious as the excessive bleeding obstructed his vision, preventing him from accurately determining the exact cause. Meanwhile, Hansen was even more anxious than Raymond himself. Hansen noticed Raymond's trembling hand and became deeply frightened. He asked if Raymond needed any assistance. In that moment, Raymond realized he wasn't alone in this. Without hesitation, he instructed young Hansen to fetch the cloth they had disinfected before to wipe away the blood. At last, Raymond's vision cleared, allowing him to see the wound more clearly and understand the reason for the excessive bleeding. Observing Raymond's distress, Hansen called out his name. After a while, Raymond discovered a method to control the bleeding. He decided to utilize magic. With that in mind, Raymond promptly accessed the system's skill store. He promptly acquired the fundamental skill of flame magic. However, he had reservations about his ability to manipulate the flames properly, as he feared it might result in burns for the patient. Unexpectedly, the system opened on its own, reassuring him that he could utilize the skills safely due to his higher intelligence level, surpassing the skill's requirements. It was then that Raymond realized intelligence played a role in magic usage. He now held a small flame in his hand. Hansen was astonished to witness Raymond employing magic. Although the skill couldn't entirely halt the bleeding, it succeeded in reducing the blood flow. Upon completing the reconnection of major blood vessels, Raymond proceeded to suture the wound. Out of the blue, Hansen inquired if Raymond had indeed used magic. After some hesitation, Hansen realized Raymond was reluctant to disclose the truth. Upon careful reflection, however, he recognized the undeniable effectiveness of Raymond's medical technology in treating patients for whom healing methods had failed. Hansen wanted to express his interest in learning the ancient treatment methods that Raymond had mentioned, albeit concerned that Raymond might not be willing to teach him. Once Raymond finished the final stitch, the system notified him of successfully saving a patient on the brink of death. After a period of time, Clearin finally regained consciousness. He still believed he was at the White Clinic. Upon discovering that he was actually at Belland, Clearin was utterly astounded. All of a sudden, an older gentleman burst into the room. Raymond recognized him instantly. When Count August inquired about the name of the healer who had treated his son, Hansen promptly revealed Raymond's identity. Both the father and son were taken aback by this revelation. Upon learning that the head healer had refused to treat his own son, Count August was consumed by rage, and when became aware of his arrival, he hastily approached to offer his greetings. The healer was unable to comprehend the words spoken by Count August, so he asked again, "The Count let his son die? Ha! What kind of nonsense?" Initially, he had intended to laugh off the situation, but to his surprise, he encountered the icy glare of both the patient and his family. In an instant, he fell silent, realizing that he had noticed the person lying in the bed. It was over. If he wasn't careful, he might face retaliation. He didn't mean to neglect Clearin as others had assumed. Oh, what a cunning and deceitful individual. Filled with anger, Clearin stood up to accuse him in front of everyone. The action of was unacceptable to the Count. The Count indicated him as a person who had abandoned his own son without an attempt of rescue, not to mention the deliberate mockery of the nobility with a lie. Such behavior deserves severe punishment. The Count looked at the person kneeling before him and shouted, "To think someone like this deals with people's lives and is respected as a self-proclaimed doctor. This mistake was too grave, and despite earnest pleas for forgiveness, he was determined to issue an order to banish as a doctor in the entire Cross-Alliance Empire." As for Raymond, the benefactor who had saved Clearin's life, after expressing his gratitude with a bow, Count inquired what would satisfy someone who did not desire treasures, such as gold and silver treasures from the kingdom. He proposed an offer, stating that from now on, his family would recognize him as a friend and provide assistance whenever needed. Raymond pondered the benefits this relationship could bring and happily agreed immediately. However, no matter the friendship, he desired for the Count to pay the medical fee. Soon after, Raymond cheerfully departed with his newfound possessions. Now, only Clearin and the Count remained. Clearin questioned his father as to why his father awarded the doctor like that. If he died, the 2N Prince would plot, and the 3RD Prince and his family would undergo hardship. Count August considered that it would be even more chaotic because of the fight over who would be the successor, since neither the 2N, 3RD, nor 4D would back off. Normally, Raymond would have no involvement in the succession of the throne. However, recently, there was a saying that the sharp needle pierced its way out of the pouch. A talentless boy was no danger, but recently, Raymond had been showing talent that wasn't ignorable. He felt a sense of unease, unsure of how this individual, with such noble heritage and outstanding abilities, would fare against the other princes. However, for the time being, he simply wanted to see Raymond blossom as a doctor and wished for his family to become a shield of support for him as a friend. News of Raymond saving Count August's son quickly spread to Prince Karm. The plan had been foiled, and Kyrm, holding a glass of wine, stepped towards the window, commanding his subordinates to closely monitor every move of Raymond from now on. Simultaneously, Raymond was finally able to gain the healer qualification after struggling for 5 years working in the clinic. It came to the day when Raymond participated in the advancement exam. He arrived with great excitement, but as he sat waiting, he couldn't help but notice the continuous stream of mocking laughter and derogatory remarks from those around him. Hansen, seeing his senior feeling down, decided to inquire and draw attention. He asked, "Senior, what are you gonna do if you pass?" Raymond's mind immediately wandered to thoughts of food, but he knew better than to utter such a response. Instead, He expressed his desire to treat patients confidently, because treating patients and seeing their happy faces was something he had always aspired to. As he thought about the patient, his heart of steel was activated. He felt a surge of limitless confidence and unwavering determination, no longer plagued by self-doubt or insecurities. Amidst their conversation, a voice suddenly called out, "Application number 39. Sir Raymond, come in." Without hesitation, Raymond swiftly entered the assessment room, only to find the situation unfolding exactly as he had anticipated. His healing power was weak, to say the least. "Can you even call that healing power?" One of them jeered. "It embarrasses me to even match." Another taunted. "It's not even worth taking this advancement test." "What were you thinking when you applied for this?" he snidely remarked. Every condescending comment was directed solely at him. However, their amusement would be short-lived, for Raymond had strategized well in advance. Activating his eloquent skill, he launched his counterattack with a question that left them speechless. "Are you saying that the healing power is going to go against the words of His Majesty, the King?" He dared to challenge them openly because his own medical technique had been personally acknowledged by His Majesty, Odin de Houston. There was no doubt about his capabilities, contrary to their baseless accusations. He continued his confident stance, asking pointedly, "Can I take this as the healing tower publicly ignoring the will of the Houston Coing?" Everyone was taken aback, but they quickly made excuses, saying that the healing tower didn't acknowledge any other treatment method other than heal. Recognizing medical technique would go against the healing tower. Raymond dismissed their arguments, saying they hadn't even considered other options. Disrespecting the king was a serious offense, so after some thought, the examiners decided to give him a chance. They promised that if he could heal the patient, they would approve him immediately. Going back to a few days before the promotion exam, in the Houston Kingdom Healing Tower branch, Count Garrison called a meeting to announce that he had assigned a patient specifically for Raymond. Most people objected because this patient's condition was too difficult for even a B+ rank healer. Their concerns were valid, but Count Garrison dismissed them, saying he wouldn't accept such a lowly treatment method from Raymond. In fact, he didn't want a filthy, illegitimate child to take the promotion exam and become a healer. Count Garrison's cousin, the mother of the 4th prince, demanded assurance that Raymond wouldn't pass the exam. So, despite the objections, the plan went ahead. In the present time, Raymond received the patient's medical records showing bed sores. Bed sores were something that would constantly worsen with their flesh rotting endlessly, even after using heals. Then, he quickly visited the patient to assess the situation. The patient's son led him to the room where an elderly man lay motionless on the bed, displaying a pained expression and emitting a smoky smell. The son immediately said, "I'm sorry. He doesn't smell good, right?" But Raymond reassured him that it didn't bother him. Given the patient's poor health, a bad smell was expected. Raymond then asked the son to help turn the patient around so he could examine the ulcerated wound on his back. After a quick assessment, he proposed to perform a surgery to cut off dead tissues and expose the infection. The son was surprised by this unconventional approach, as no one had tried it before. But after Raymond explained and encouraged him, he reluctantly agreed to the surgery. The procedure began by exposing the blackened, rotten flesh and extracting the yellow discharge. He used a herb that had natural antibiotics to sterilize it thoroughly. The surgery went surprisingly fast, leaving the son amazed. Raymond instructed the son to regularly change the patient's position after the operation, as the ulcer was caused by prolonged pressure. Changing positions frequently could prevent bed sores. After some time, news of the successful treatment for the elderly man's bed sores reached the examiner's ears. Everyone, except Count Garrison, admired Raymond's healing abilities. Considering his skills, it seemed reasonable to classify Raymond as a skilled healer. However, some members opposed this idea, arguing that since Raymond had not achieved even grade F before, such a rapid promotion was not fair. After much discussion, the task was eventually assigned to Count Garrison. "I think roughly D rank is suitable," Garrison replied. Unlike the previous promotion exam, this time most people vehemently disagreed with Garrison's decision to place Raymond in the D rank, regardless of his reasons. They brought up the Emperor and the Princess to pressure him into reconsidering and making a well-thought-out decision. Otherwise, they warned that everyone present could be held collectively responsible. Garrison's plan to win the support of the fourth prince had completely failed. Reluctantly, he had no choice but to delegate the decision-making power to the capital of the empire and ask their opinions. When the capital of the empire was mentioned, the others stopped complaining. After all, it was the safest option. Garrison received a prompt reply, and a paper with a prominent U rank was handed to him. Thus, the first U rank in the healer ranking system came into existence. With the result paper in his hands, Raymond felt joyous that this monotonous apprenticeship had finally come to an end. A malicious thought briefly crossed his mind when he was about to set the clinic ablaze for revenge. Hansen arrived just in time. Raymond quickly engaged in conversation with him and conveniently destroyed the evidence. Following the promotion exam, Hansen informed Raymond that he had achieved a C rank in the evaluation and was contemplating working at the Maple Clinic, one of the premier clinics in the capital. Raymond continuously congratulated and cheered on his junior, mentioning that he had secured a healer loan immediately after approval. The two young men sat together and became intoxicated rather quickly. Taking advantage of his senior's jovial state, Hansen promptly inquired, "The ruin where you got the medical technique. Could you tell me where it is?" As the saying goes, in vino veritas, in wine, there is truth. Raymond did not conceal anything and replied that such a place did not exist. The knowledge he possessed seemed to appear magically in his mind. This response seemed incredibly perplexing, and to a sensitive and inebriated person like Hansen, it felt as if he was being teased. He exclaimed, "You could have just said you didn't want to tell me." However, upon calming his anger, Hansen realized his behavior was inappropriate and promptly turned to leave without further delay. Although a minor unpleasant incident occurred that day, their friendship remained intact. A few days later, while Hansen was working at the clinic, he overheard people discussing how Raymond had declined an invitation from the esteemed Raoul Clinic, considered the finest in the capital. Hansen immediately went to the clinic to confirm it himself. Hansen burst into the room, calling out to Raymond in a loud voice. After a brief exchange of questions and answers, Hansen learned that his foolish friend had given up a wonderful opportunity to work in a highly regarded place, just to set up his own clinic. But it wasn't an easy task, and even required a lot of experience to be able to open a clinic. Raymond explained, "I know that it won't be easy, but I am going to do it anyway." To gain experience and level up, Raymond needed to treat numerous patients. He knew that at clinics like Raoul or other places, as a newcomer, he would have less chances to treat patients compared to more experienced healers. Hansen, observing Raymond's determined expression, stopped opposing him and asked where Raymond intended to open his clinic, as all the regions around here were occupied by large clinics, and there was not room for him here. To Hansen's surprise, Raymond revealed that he had chosen the Bay region, a poor area located on the outskirts of the Northwest. It was a completely lawless region. Not one noble would dare to visit this area. On the day Raymond prepared to embark on his journey, many people came to bid him farewell. Most of them couldn't bear to see this talented healer go through the hardships of working in such a place. Hansen handed Raymond a letter from the haughty Princess Sophia. The letter didn't contain much, just a simple insult calling him a fool for going to the Bay region. Raymond paid little attention to the letter and casually discarded it. Hansen, refusing to give up, continued to urge Raymond to reconsider. However, this time Raymond explained that he used to live in the Bay village before his mother passed away, so it was no different than his home. That place held more warmth and significance for him than the royal palace or the prestigious Belland Clinic. He assured Hansen, saying, "It's always been a dream of mine since childhood to set up a clinic in the poor village. So don't worry too much. I'll be all right." Upon hearing those words, Hansen finally made a firm decision. He persistently pleaded to join Raymond, as he believed that working with him would be far better than being surrounded by a bunch of money-hungry and disreputable individuals in the Maple Clinic. Hansen had just one simple request: to learn medical techniques from Raymond through observation, as he guessed that Raymond would never bother to teach anyone. Raymond found himself at a crossroads, unsure of what decision to make. Just then, the pupil fostering mode in the system asked him for his teachings. If he accepted Hansen as his pupil, a certain percentage of the EXP would be shared with him when his pupil healed a patient. Without any complaints, Raymond immediately agreed to the proposition. Having an apprentice meant he could increase his skill points and even learn a new skill called clumsy teaching. Soon, Raymond and Hansen embarked on their journey to the Bay Area. Hansen came prepared with all the necessary equipment, as if he were heading into battle. He even handed Raymond an iron stick for self-defense. As soon as Raymond held the stick, a system notification appeared, acknowledging the weapon and offering him the opportunity to learn self-defense skill through it. Upon their arrival, the village seemed unwelcoming. No one greeted them, and everyone stayed inside, shutting their doors tightly. They felt disheartened by the consecutive days of having no patients in their clinic. Their situation took a turn for the worse when someone started throwing stones at their window. Hansen, infuriated, chased after the perpetrator and discovered that the exterior of their clinic was covered in offensive graffiti made with red ink. Despite the mounting challenges and dangers, Raymond couldn't simply walk away. He had borrowed a significant amount of money from the healer loan to establish the clinic, and leaving now was not an option. Just as Raymond contemplated the increasing interest on his debt and the possibility of the healer loan pressuring him, a mission appeared in the system. The task was to change the minds of the people of the slums. The reward for accomplishing this mission was a bonus level up and an additional 30 skill points. Without hesitation, Raymond made his decision clear. "I am gonna stay behind. I can't back out just because of one threat. You can leave. I'll stay here alone." Raymond's determination to recoup his investment, combined with Hansen's reluctance to be seen as cowardly, led them both to choose to stay and continue their fight. Raymond and Hansen proceeded with their undercover plan. The following day, they arrived at the slum center plaza to engage in conversations with the locals. Fortunately, two men recognized Raymond as the child who had been brought to the palace 15 years ago. However, their demeanor quickly turned confrontational, assuming that Raymond was just another nobleman who had come to mock and toy with them. Despite being scolded, Raymond didn't get upset and soon activated his Heart of Steel skill to maintain composure. He explained that his true purpose for being there was to provide medical treatment to the sick. He then used his eloquent skill to deliver sincere words to them. He shared the story of his late mother, who had passed away without receiving any treatment, and expressed his desire to prevent others from suffering the same fate. That's why he established a clinic in their community and not elsewhere. To earn their trust, Raymond decided to venture into the deepest corner of the slum and treat patients of the Crescent Street. Crescent Street was an entertainment district and the darkest area, even within the slums. Among those who worked in the entertainment district, there were those who had the god's curse. Their first patient was a woman who concealed her face with dark lace fabric. She agreed to uncover her face, expecting Raymond to be frightened by God's curse. However, Raymond surprised her with his composure and compassion. Raymond meticulously examined her condition and expressed his willingness to help others in need. The community quickly gathered in a room for further examinations and diagnoses. Raymond clarified that what they had wasn't God's curse. It was just a normal disease, known as syphilis. After a certain time had passed, the spots would disappear and remain dormant. Rent from the syphilis on Earth, it was still just a variant of it. different from normal people whose condition wouldn't get worse with the help of heal. The symptoms of the patients in the slum that couldn't get treatment worsened, and that was why they probably thought of it as God's curse. Raymond assured them that he could treat the disease, but requested to use their moldy bread to make a magic pill. The legendary medicine that changed all of medical history was called penicillin. Instead of using expensive and rare herbs, Raymond made a clever choice by using the mold on moldy bread to produce the medicine, effectively reducing costs. Raymond, with his natural talent, conducted research and successfully developed the first antibiotic similar to penicillin in Pentana. This accomplishment boosted his skills by 2 levels and granted him 100 skill points. Furthermore, Raymond was fortunate enough to acquire a new skill called alchemy, which allowed him to efficiently extract various simple medications. Eager to put his newly acquired skill to use, Raymond promptly began producing a large quantity of medicine. Through his perseverance and unwavering dedication to his patients, he achieved desired results. The girls who previously suffered from syphilis and sought his help were now completely cured. Considering their disadvantaged circumstances, Raymond made the noble decision not to charge them any fees. Instead, he kindly requested that if they encountered individuals with similar symptoms, they should bring them to him for assistance. By seizing this opportunity, Raymond effectively promoted the treatment facility, gaining recognition among the residents of the slum area for his valuable contributions. News of Raymond's commendable actions quickly spread, and as time passed, more patients put their trust in him, leading to a substantial and dizzying increase in his experience points. After a demanding day, that evening, the two of them enthusiastically sat down to tally their earnings. Little did they notice that a stranger with malicious intentions appeared just outside the window. The following day, a group of tough individuals visited Raymond's clinic and caused trouble. They identified themselves as members of the Bay Region Alliance Association. They accused Raymond of making a mess of the market's order and demanded a steep increase in treatment fees to 100 pina, or else he had to leave immediately. Raymond recognized them. They were the money-driven individuals who had prevented his mother from receiving treatment. Most of them were illegal healers who didn't have the qualifications, so reasoning with them seemed unlikely to work. Without hesitation, Raymond enacted a resistance plan. He adopted a nobleman's tone and threatened them, saying, "Who are you guys speaking informally? I am a noble." To his relief, the tactic worked like a charm. The troublemakers became frightened and dared not confront him. That evening, they began discussing an alternative plan. The leader finally revealed himself. It was Lance. Stripped of his healer status, he had no choice but to resort to practicing illegal healing in this slum area. Lance proposed, "Let's hire the Blue Moon Guild." The Green Moon Society was known as a group that protected the poor from evil people, but its master, a man named Kanzir, had a major weakness. He was easily deceived and arrogant. After sharing his plan with his faction, he immediately ran to Kanzir and pretended to cry, framing Raymond. Just as Clance had planned, Kanzir was tricked, and the very next day, he stormed into Raymond's clinic, threatening him without bothering to inquire about the truth. With a forceful swing of his hand, he smashed a chair and menacingly threatened Raymond. "Get out of this place immediately. If you don't, I'll crush you and this clinic into pieces." With debts yet to be repaid and no earnings from treating patients, Raymond and Hansen faced the risk of bankruptcy. They didn't know what to do in this situation. Raymond believed at this time they would have to leave for good. However, in the midst of it all, a patient spoke up. "Why are you so angry? Did Sir Raymond do anything wrong?" Upon hearing this, Kanzir immediately informed those present that Raymond was using people of the Bay region to conduct human experiments. He accuses Raymond of trying out cultish treatment methods and coming to the slums to deceive and make use of everyone here for free. Of course, this accusation was unfounded. Raymond quickly defended himself, but then a mission appeared. demanding that he treat the asshole patient. Now, Raymond knew what he had to do. He explained to Kanzir that his treatment methods had been recognized by the kings, and he was a qualified healer from the healing tower. It turned out that these baseless rumors were spread by other healers in the region who intentionally attacked the clinic because Raymond charged significantly less for his services. Recalling the amount of money he had spent on the healer lance, Kanzir began to doubt the situation. He suspected there might be some conflict between the two parties and requested a moment to verify everything before returning. However, the patient who had arrived at the clinic couldn't possibly leave without receiving treatment. Raymond rushed to convince Kanzir to stay a little longer. In doing so, he discovered that this person suffered from a chronic condition that had continuously plagued them in the rectal area. After diagnosing the condition, the next step was to persuade the patient to lie down for surgery to remove the hemorrhoids. As this task was classified as low level, it wasn't too difficult for someone with Raymond's skill. He completed the surgery quickly and advised the patient to take extra care for the next 3 days, as there might be some discomfort. Raymond recommended a sitz bath method for relief, as he had previously explained. Kanzir proved to be a generous and kind-hearted benefactor. He handed Raymond a large bag of gold to cover the treatment expenses and promised to deal with anyone who had dared to insult the clinic. Not long after Kanzir's departure, the individuals aligned with Lance finally faced the consequences of their actions. They were soundly defeated by Kanzir and banished. Since then, they were never seen wandering near the capital. With the challenges resolved, the following days became joyful for Raymond. He and Hansen continued treating patients to earn income and gain experience points. However, one day, Lance suddenly rushed into the clinic, looking panicked, and exclaimed, "Sir Healer, big trouble! You must run away quickly. There's someone with an infectious disease." Kanzir informed him that it was a deadly disease known as the Grim Reaper of Death, which was essentially another term for smallpox, one of the most severe infectious diseases at the time. When the Grim Reaper of Death, smallpox, and the Fog of Death, the Black Death, run rampant, one must run immediately. That was the unofficial rule that the healing tower had given. That disease claimed billions of lives on Earth, and Raymond knew for sure that if he didn't run away immediately, he would get sick and potentially die like the rest of them. A girl suddenly interjected into the conversation saying, "Is it really the Grim Reaper of Death? Although the disease we got was called the Curse of God, didn't Sir Raymond show us that wasn't the case?" She added, "It has been a long time since smallpox spread out in the Houston Kingdom. It was weird that it suddenly appeared in the capital." Upon hearing this, Raymond nodded in agreement. To avoid misdiagnosis of the patients, he decided to ask the witnesses to determine if the symptoms of the outbreak matched those of death. According to a man's account, all the patients had high fevers, and there were numerous blisters all over their bodies. The old people who experienced the Grim Reaper of Death in the past had gathered together and said that those symptoms were the same as the ones they had. Raymond fell silent, carefully contemplating. The symptoms described by the man were quite common, but it wasn't necessarily smallpox. He wanted to save them, but if there was something more certain, it would be better. The final challenge was finally sent, requesting to save the patients who were about to face unfair deaths. Raymond's savior was here now. Relying on the content and interpretation, he could be certain that this unjust death was not caused by death. The situation was critical. Raymond instructed Hansen to find a thick fabric that could be used as a mask and provided gloves and a cloak to cover the whole body. He gave these instructions because they needed them to prepare for examining and testing the isolated patients. That evening, Raymond and Hansen arrived at a house where people were being prepared to be cremated, completely covered from head to toe. He was stopped by two men who claimed that this family had been infected by death and needed to be cleansed immediately. They advised Raymond to leave quickly because the place was currently very dangerous. Raymond anxiously asked them to wait a moment while he confirmed whether it was really smallpox or not. And if necessary, the cleansing could still be done later. To be precautious for the worst, he opened his market and immediately purchased a shield to protect him against physical threats and the droplets from entering his airway. With that taken care of, he automatically entered the house. In front of him stood a woman and 3 children. Raymond approached them friendly and then carefully examined them. Fortunately, it turned out to be not death but simply chickenpox. The blisters were not buried deep in the skin, but only on the surface. Raymond informed the mother of the 3 children that chickenpox would go away on its own if they just let them be. Now that he had the answer, Raymond breathed a sigh of relief and stepped outside to explain clearly to everyone around and requested them to stop the cleansing. After some time, just as he had said, the family affected by that disease completely recovered. Raymond's reputation grew, and the people here welcomed him as a deity. The following day was indeed a beautiful sunny day, and the mother of the children who had chickenpox brought some meat as thanks. Hansen promptly entered the kitchen and prepared a few dishes. While they were enjoying their meal, Hansen suddenly brought up the past, asking, "Raymond, did you use shield magic back then?" Raymond nodded in response, acknowledging that he did use a shield, but he clarified that he obtained it by chance and not through ancient magic. In this world, heal, magic, aura, and the source of all miracles was a mysterious power. Healers would use mana to perform heal, mages would use it for magic, while knights would use it for mana blades and aura. The knights used lower energy core to train their mana, the accumulated mana below their stomach. Healers used the upper energy core to use mana. When it came to the 3 classes, healers struggled the most to accumulate mana. Considering his 1 point of mana, Raymond understood that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't surpass the F level. Nevertheless, he found himself using both magic and healing simultaneously, even though he couldn't accumulate mana in his mana core. Raymond lowered his head and glanced at his hands, realizing that he needed ample time for careful introspection regarding his own capabilities. While Raymond was attending to an emergency case, the Emperor and his entourage disguised themselves and roamed around the slum. They swiftly entered a tavern to eavesdrop on any news. While enjoying their food and drinks, they overheard the drunken ramblings of 2 individuals. Someone died in Raymond's clinic. The other person chimed in, "I guess not even Raymond was all-powerful. Weren't there rumors that he was treating patients for free to use them as human experiments?" Their conversation grew more exaggerated, maligning those of high status, simply thought of the people in the slums as huge sores. At that moment, a young woman sitting nearby grew fed up with their words. She stood up abruptly and challenged their claims. She recounted firsthand that all the other healers callously ignored the recently deceased patient because they couldn't treat him and didn't want to waste their energy on him. Only Raymond had gone above and beyond to save a patient who had lost all hope, shedding tears when he saw the patient's breath fade away. Others began to speak up, offering their support for Raymond, and the atmosphere shifted to praise him as the healer who consistently helped everyone in that clinic. Leaving the tavern, the Emperor and his companions wore expressions of contentment and satisfaction. As they were about to return to the palace, they suddenly heard a desperate cry for help nearby. A young girl found herself under attack by 3 men, prompting Emperor Odin de Houston to draw his sword without hesitation and rush to her aid. With his formidable swordsmanship, he easily subdued the assailants, but to his surprise, the girl he had just rescued turned out to be an assassin. Taking advantage of his momentary distraction, she swiftly unsheathed a short sword and delivered a powerful strike to his arm. King Houston didn't hesitate to respond to her with a swift sword strike on her left shoulder. The female assassin quickly stepped back, realizing that her opponent was not someone easily dealt with. She swiftly muttered an incantation, filling the air with smokescreen magic. In the hazy white smoke that obscured their vision, the female assassin reappeared and launched a sneak attack from behind. Luckily, Galman arrived just in time to save his king from being targeted by the enemy. The injured spot on King Houston's left arm was turning blue, and the journey back to the palace seemed too far as the symptoms worsened. Thus, they had no choice but to go straight to Raymond's clinic and seek his help. Raymond greeted the two guests with a cheerful smile as they entered his clinic. However, his smile quickly turned into a concerned expression upon seeing their mysterious and intimidating appearance. The examination of the wound and the diagnosis proceeded quickly. Raymond explained that the headache seemed to be caused by a poison with dragon blood poison and nerve poison. He continued, "This poison is a 3 white snakes poison mixed with the extract of an alpenrose. So if I administer an antidote for a 3 white snakes poison, then I can detoxify it." Raymond was surprised by the Dark Prince's extensive knowledge. "Curious," he asked, "how did you know what the poison is? Is it the ancient knowledge known as the medical technique?" He asked this because people usually just used heal to invigorate one's vitality to purge the poison because it took too long to identify the poison though. Raymond didn't hide the fact and said that it was knowledge he had acquired. If it came to botany, he considered himself an S-class genius. However, there was a worrying aspect. This poison was an enhanced version of the 3 white snakes poison. This meant it was not effective enough with just the antidote for the 3 white snakes poison. He had an optimal method to completely neutralize the toxins, but he hesitated because it was a new method and might not receive their approval. The method was to inject the antidote directly to his blood vessel using a needle. Immediately after explaining, both of them rejected the idea outright. The Silent King suddenly threatened, "I heard a patient recently died in this place. If you're doing some kind of weird experiment because people came to the slums for treatment, I won't forgive that." Raymond trembled at the previous threats, but quickly regained his composure by activating his heart of steel. To confront a rude person who bullied directly, Raymond chose to grasp his hand and swore upon his family name Pennon that he inherited from his mother, assuring him that there was no better method than this to treat the poison that he had. Finally, his oath had an effect, and the man sitting across from him reluctantly agreed to the treatment. The king received an injection with the reassurance that it would only sting like a mosquito bite, not as terrible as he imagined. With everything settled, as they waited for the antidote to take effect, an unexpected occurrence happened. The king suddenly bowed his head in pain. Oh dear. Raymond's body jerked at the thought of what he was afraid of. Could it be that he was experiencing a side effect of the medicine?